Ever since I can remember, I knew I was just a replacement for my dead sister. The day before I started elementary school, my parents took me to buy a backpack. My mom smiled warmly and asked me, "Sienna, which one do you want? The blue one or the red one?" I pointed at the blue one. Instantly, her smile vanished. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip painfully tight, and screamed hysterically in my face. "Why didn't you choose red? Gemma only ever chose red." Seeing my mom having another episode, my dad slapped me hard across the face. My nose bled. The blood was red, too. From that day on, I only ever chose red things. I only dared to want what Gemma would have liked. Once, while playing with my classmates, some Play-Doh got stuck in my hair. The teacher kindly helped me cut the tangled piece out. But when my mom came to pick me up, she lost her mind. Gemma had long hair. "You are not my daughter." She kicked me out of the car. I ran after it, crying, chasing the car for half an hour before I finally made it home. To avoid triggering my mom, I started mimicking Gemma in every single way. This lasted until the college application season. I scored a perfect 1600 on my SATs and got accepted into Harvard, but my mom demanded that I enroll in the local community college down the street instead. Gemma was accepted into this college before she died. "You have to go." My high school counselor called to reason with her, but my mom snapped at him, shutting him down instantly. If Gemma hadn't died, Sienna wouldn't even have been born. Looking at her hysterical face, I suddenly felt like everything was so pointless. Since I had to copy my sister in every way, then I shouldn't miss out on her final act either. She drowned when she was 18. Maybe I should do the same. When the admission package from the community college arrived, a few local reporters showed up at our door. The moment my mom opened the door, microphones and camera lenses were shoved into her face. "Are you the mother of the genius student, Sienna? Was choosing a community college really Sienna's own decision? Don't you think it's unfair to sacrifice Sienna's future to make up for your late daughter's regrets?" Hearing their questions, my mom snapped. She violently pushed the reporters out and slammed the door. Then, she dragged me to Gemma's memorial corner and forced me to my knees. "Sienna, did you call those reporters on purpose? We are letting you go to the school your sister never got to attend. How is that unfair to you?" The wooden hanger struck my back. I bit my lower lip, so hard it bled. My dad was so angry, he smashed a coffee mug on the floor. "Just to rebel against us, you cheated your way to a perfect SAT score?" Gemma would never do something so dishonest. Hearing my dad's words, I felt so hopeless I wanted to laugh. Back in middle school, my brain finally clicked, and I brought home a straight-A report card for the first time. What welcomed me was a brutal beating. "Gemma was always an average student. How could you possibly get top grades? You must have cheated." To be just like Gemma and avoid triggering them, I learned how to control my grades. I intentionally tanked my GPAs and practice tests. But on the final SAT, the most important turning point in my life, I chose to show my real strength. I never expected that instead of being proud, they would forcibly change my college applications and accuse me of cheating. "I didn't cheat," I said. "Just because Gemma couldn't get top scores doesn't mean I can't." I straightened my back and stood up to them for the first time in my life. Shocked by my defiance, my mom gasped. She stood there, pointing a trembling finger at me, stuttering, "You?" For a long time. Finally, she locked me inside Gemma's old room and went outside to chase down the reporters. "I want to report Sienna. She cheated on her exams. I want a full investigation." Hearing my mom's righteous voice through the door, tears of laughter streamed down my face. In the darkness, my sister's portrait seemed to stare down at me. When I was little and forced to kneel here alone to reflect on my mistakes, I would always be terrified of her picture and cry. But now, I looked straight into Gemma's eyes and whispered, "I really envy you. You've been gone for 20 years, and they still love you so much. If I die, will they love me like this too?" The portrait remained silent, her carefree smile frozen in time. She had a deep dimple on her right cheek when she smiled. I didn't. Because of that, my mom never allowed me to smile in front of her. Gemma was naturally hyperactive and loved running wild outside. To force me outside, my mom tore up my sketchbooks and snapped my drawing pencils. She wouldn't let me back into the house until it was pitch black. Even on my birthdays, I could only celebrate Gemma's birthday. The cake was always mango-flavored because it was Gemma's favorite, even though I was severely allergic to mangoes. When it was time to blow out the candles, Gemma's portrait was placed right across from me. My only allowed wish was to pray that Gemma was doing well in heaven. I had been my sister's shadow for 18 years. I didn't even know who the real me was anymore. How could they ever love me? I don't know how long I sat in the dark. Suddenly, the door clicked open. My dad stood in the doorway, blocking the light from the hallway. He looked incredibly exhausted. Sienna, go apologize to your mother. Ever since your sister passed away, your mom's mental state hasn't been stable, my dad said. She's getting old. You need to be more understanding. I didn't argue. I walked out numbly. Like I had done 1,000 times before, I spoke my lines.
Mom, I'm sorry.
I shouldn't have talked back to you. I shouldn't have gotten those high scores. My mom turned to look at me, but her eyes were glassy and unfocused. She was having another episode. She was seeing Gemma again. My sweet Gemma, what are you talking about? Come, sit down and eat. Mom made all your favorite foods. She pulled me to the dining table and kept piling food onto my plate. This was a treatment I never received when she was lucid. Most of the time, I had to sit the furthest away from the dishes. My parents would sit on either side of Gemma's framed photo. The thickest cut of the steak, the extra cherry on the pie, and the perfectly golden center of the cinnamon roll. Those were always reserved for Gemma. I only got to taste them when my mom was confused. After dinner, my mom led me to Gemma's room. She made me lie down on Gemma's soft, queen-sized bed. She carefully tucked me in and sat by the bedside, gently patting my back. Sleep tight, sweetie. Mom is right here watching over you. I heard this was Gemma's habit when she was little. She was terrified of the dark and couldn't fall asleep alone. She needed my mom to stay with her every night. When I was 6, a violent thunderstorm kept me awake. Clutching my pillow, I ran to Gemma's room to find my mom. But my mom shoved me out of the house into the cold night. You're so young, yet you're already trying to steal your sister's spotlight. I don't have such an ungrateful daughter. I cried until my voice went completely hoarse. My mom didn't let me back inside until dawn. Now, feeling this rare, borrowed maternal love, I began to count down in my head. 5, 4, 3, 2. The moment I hit 1, my mom's eyes snapped back to reality. The warmth in her eyes instantly turned into pure hatred. Why are you in Gemma's bed? Are you trying to steal the last piece of her left in this world? Get out. She dragged me off the bed. Practically on instinct, I scrambled out of the room before she could throw her slippers at me. I retreated to my bedroom, which was actually a modified utility closet. Compared to Gemma's cozy room, this place was incredibly depressing. It got 0 sunlight, and it was so damp and cold that I suffered from chronic eczema. Once, when the itching became unbearable, I begged my parents to move to a bigger house. I told them I didn't want a big room like Gemma's. I just wanted a small bedroom that got some sunlight. Our family could easily afford it. But my dad just slapped me. My mom's hand shook with rage as she pointed at me. This house is the only place your sister ever lived. If we move, she won't be able to find her way home. How can you be so selfish? So, I had to retreat back into my tiny, cramped closet. Even this closet didn't fully belong to me. 2/3 of the space was packed with Gemma's old things. Her old keyboard, her dolls, her roller skates. They were covered in thick layers of dust, but I wasn't even allowed to touch them. Because they preserved Gemma's scent. I wasn't allowed to ruin it. After calming my mom down, my dad did something rare. He walked into my room. The school board checked. You didn't cheat. We misjudged you. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him quietly. Sienna, your sister died the day before she was supposed to leave for college. That is the pain of your mother's life. Even if you are a genius, you must go to that community college. This is your destiny. You have to accept it. In the dim light, I let out a soft laugh. I accept it. Watching his relieved back as he walked away, I added silently in my heart. And I will surely follow my sister's destiny and drown the day before college starts. To celebrate Gemma's new beginning, my parents decided to throw a massive graduation party for her. And I was required to attend as her stand-in. My mom took it very seriously. She dug up some clothes that matched the style Gemma used to wear. Styles from 20 years ago, long outdated. They were cheap clothes my mom had bought from thrift stores or received as hand-me-downs from relatives. Some of the collars were stretched out, and the sleeves were fraying. They all smelled like stale mildew. When I was forced to wear them to school as a kid, my classmates would laugh at me behind my back. Now, I put them on without a word. Seeing me in those clothes, my mom's eyes welled with tears. I knew she was looking at Gemma, through me again. That loving gaze of hers had never once truly landed on me. Don't smile too much later, but keep your manners sweet, she instructed. Your sister was closest to your uncle and Aunt Clara. Make sure you talk to them more. She went over the details one by one, terrified I would make a mistake. If I didn't act like Gemma, their beautiful dream would shatter. She had no idea that after 18 years of acting, Gemma's behavior was already carved into my bones. I knew Gemma better than anyone else did. At the party, every relative who saw me gasped. Sienna looks so much like Gemma. 20 years flew by so fast. Gemma used to wear clothes just like this when she greeted us. Yeah, she's just like Gemma. Smart, sweet, and always knowing exactly what to say. Everyone was using me to reminisce about Gemma. It had been like this since I was a little girl. Sienna likes red too, and she wears her hair in the same pigtails Gemma did. Sienna can't sit still either, just like Gemma, always wanting to run wild outside. In the beginning, I would silently scream in my head, "No, I'm nothing like my sister. I hate red. I hate long hair. I just want to stay inside, read my books, and paint. I don't want to go outside." But as the years went on, the lines blurred. What color did I actually like? What did I enjoy doing in my free time? What kind of food did I prefer? If Gemma had never existed, and I was my parents' first child, what would my name have been? Sienna? A young male voice called out from behind me. I turned around in shock. It was Aunt Clara's son, my cousin Zach. He was 3 years older than me and was the only person present who had never met Gemma. And he was the only one who never called me Gemma. He insisted on calling me Sienna. Ever since he left for college out of state 3 years ago, we hadn't seen each other. Long time no see, Sienna. He reached out and ruffled my hair, just like he used to do when we were kids. Then he handed me a gift box. "This is your graduation present." I took it numbly and opened it. Inside was a complete set of expensive, professional art supplies. Zach rubbed the back of his neck, looking a bit embarrassed. "I remembered you loved drawing when you were little. I hope you can still use these." He then handed me another shopping bag. "This is from my mom. You're going to college soon, so she picked out a couple of outfits suitable for a young girl. Hope you like them." I looked down into the bag. Inside was a light blue sundress and a simple white t-shirt. Very basic, but my eyes welled up instantly. The fake, Gemma-like smile was still plastered on my face. What would the perfect Sienna say right now? What would she do? My mind went completely blank. I realized I didn't even need to wait until the day before college to drown. The real Sienna had died a long time ago. The person standing here was just a cheap, broken copy of Gemma. I stood there like a frozen robot. Seeing my silence, Zach started to panic. "What's wrong? Do you not like them?" He looked at me, then glanced over at Aunt Clara. "If you don't like them, we can go exchange them for something else after dinner." I sniffed, shaking my head with a smile. "No, I love them. Thank you, Zach." Noticing the redness in my eyes, Zach sighed softly. "Sienna, my mom told me about what's been going on." He patted my shoulder. "Your mom's mental health is really bad. You've had to suffer so much just to keep her happy. Once you start college, focus on your grades. You can apply for grad school later. Your life is just starting, Sienna. I know you're going to have an amazing future." Hearing Zach's words, I could barely keep my smile from cracking. Did I really have a future? Could I really shed Gemma's shadow and just live as myself? I got my answer that very night. As soon as we got home, my mom grabbed the art supplies Zach had given me and threw them right out the window. The paint bottles shattered on the concrete driveway below. They looked like splatters of colorful blood from someone who had just jumped. I rushed to the window, but before I could react, my mom pulled the blue dress out of the shopping bag. She flicked a lighter, and the flame instantly licked the fabric. The fire illuminated her twisted face. "Who allowed you to accept these? Gemma never had things like this. What are you trying to prove by bringing them into this house?" Recalling my cousin's words, something inside me finally snapped. Gemma is dead. She's dead. I am Sienna. I am a living, breathing human being. I have my own tastes. I have my own life to live. She died at 18. I've played her ghost for 18 years. Isn't that enough? My answer was a stinging slap that cut through the air. The force knocked me to the ground, my back crashing into the memorial table. Gemma's portrait fell with a loud crash, the glass shattering. Her hollow eyes stared straight into mine. My mom pointed a shaking finger at me, her voice trembling. "How dare you? How dare you? If Gemma hadn't died, you wouldn't even have a life to live. My daughter never got to have a future. What makes you think you deserve one?" Even though I had always known she didn't love me, hearing those words out loud made my heart shatter into a million pieces. I lay on the floor, my palms sliced open by the shards of Gemma's frame. Blood pooled under my hand. My mom sank to her knees, crying hysterically as she cradled Gemma's portrait in her arms. "My Gemma, my sweet Gemma. Does it hurt? Mommy will find a better place for you." She walked right past me, carrying the portrait, without giving me a single glance. My dad grabbed his jacket and rushed out after her. The front door slammed shut. I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry, Zach," I thought. "That beautiful future you talked about. I won't be able to see it. The hem of the burnt dress was charred black, looking like a withered flower. I pulled it over my head, put it on, and looked at the wide-open window. At this moment, I suddenly changed my mind. I didn't want to drown like Gemma anymore. In my final moment, I wanted to end it as Sienna. This was the only tiny rebellion I had left. I climbed onto the windowsill and took one last look at this house. Then, I closed my eyes and let myself fall backward into the night. The rush of night air against my face felt like a sudden, icy slap of freedom. For 2 seconds, I was weightless. I wasn't Gemma's ghost. I wasn't my mother's replacement doll. I was just Sienna, falling through the dark. Then came the impact. I didn't hit the unforgiving concrete driveway head-on. Halfway down, my body crashed through the thick, overgrown branches of the old hydrangea bushes lining the side of the house, snapping wood and shredding leaves before slamming violently onto the hood of a parked car. The metallic crunch echoed through the silent neighborhood. Glass shattered. The air in my lungs was crushed out in an agonizing gasp. Pain, blinding, white-hot, and suffocating, exploded through my ribs, my shoulder, and my right leg. Crimson pooled around my head, mixing with the splatters of broken paint from my shattered art supplies that still clung to the concrete
Below.
I lay on the dented hood, staring up at the empty, starless sky. The scorched hem of the blue dress fluttered in the night breeze. I was bleeding, broken, and agonizingly alive. Sienna. A frantic voice cut through the ringing in my ears. Heavy footsteps sprinted down the driveway. It was Zach. He hadn't left. After driving away from the house earlier, the uneasy feeling in his chest had grown so suffocating that he had pulled over. Down the block, unable to shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Sienna. Oh God, stay still. Don't move. Zach's voice cracked with pure panic. As he rushed to the side of his sedan, his hands hovered over me, trembling, afraid that touching me would hurt me more. Zach. I choked out, a thin trickle of blood sliding down the corner of my
Mouth. I didn't drown.
Shut up. Save your energy. Zach swore frantically, pulling out his phone with blood-stained fingers and dialing emergency services. I need an ambulance. 442. Maple Street. Hurry, please. She fell from the second floor. She's bleeding. Above us, the front door of the house swung open. My parents had just returned from rushing out with Gemma's framed picture. My mother froze at the top of the porch steps, staring at the scene in the
Driveway.
For a split second, I expected terror or grief in her eyes. Instead, her face contorted into pure, demonic rage. She stomped down the steps, pointing at me as I lay broken on the hood of the
Car.
What did you do? Look at what you did to your sister's clothes. You ruined the dress. You ugly, attention-seeking brat. Zach whipped his head around, his eyes wild with fury. Get the hell back.
Are
you insane? She's bleeding to death. She did this on purpose. My mother shrieked, her voice reaching a shrill, inhuman register. She did this to humiliate me. She wants the neighbors to think I'm a bad mother. Get off that car, Sienna. Get up right now. My father hurried down behind her, but instead of checking my pulse, he looked nervously down the street at the lit windows of our neighbors' houses. Sienna, stop making a scene. Do you have any idea how much it costs to repair a car? Hood. Why are you always pushing your mother to her limits? Listening to them, a weak, wet laugh escaped my throat. Even while dying in a pool of my own blood, my crime wasn't almost losing my
life.
My crime was ruining Gemma's vintage dress and embarrassing them. The distant wail of sirens cut through the night, growing louder with every passing second. Don't lose focus, Sienna, Zach whispered, kneeling beside me, tears slipping down his cheeks as he blocked my parents from coming near me. Hold on. Please, just hold on. I closed my eyes as the flashing red and blue lights illuminated the driveway. For the first time in my life, the red light didn't terrify me. I woke up to the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic and the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor. Every inch of my body throbbed with a deep, aching pain. My right arm was immobilized in a heavy cast. My ribs were tightly wrapped, and oxygen tubes rested beneath my nose. She's waking up, a soft voice murmured. I opened my eyes slowly. The harsh fluorescent lights blinded me for a moment. Before the blurred shapes in the room took form, sitting by my bedside was Aunt Clara, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Beside her stood Zach, looking haggard, his jaw clenched tight. In the corner of the room, 2 police officers were taking notes alongside a man In a sharp suit, Mr. Harrison, my high school guidance counselor. Sienna? Aunt Clara took my left hand gently, her voice trembling.
Oh,
Sweetie, thank God. Aunt Clara, Zach. My voice was barely a raspy whisper. Where are they? They aren't coming anywhere near you, Zach said, his voice cold and resolute. I filed an emergency restraining order the moment the police arrived at the
house.
Aunt Clara and I are your legal temporary guardians now. Before I could process his words, the hospital room door was shoved open, violently. My mother burst in, her hair disheveled, her eyes bloodshot and unhinged.
My
Father followed closely behind, looking frantic. Sienna, you ungrateful little bitch, my mother yelled, ignoring the nurses who tried to stop her. The police came to our house. The reporters are standing outside the front gate. Is this what you wanted? To ruin your sister's memory? Ma'am, you need to step back immediately, one of the police officers commanded, stepping between my mother and my bed. Get out of my way. That is my daughter. My mother screamed, her fingers
clawing at the air.
She cheated on her SATs. She's mentally unstable. She threw herself out the window just to frame us. We were only trying to guide her. My father stepped forward, trying to sound authoritative. Officers, this is a private family matter. Sienna has severe behavioral issues. She has been jealous of her deceased sister her entire life. We are taking her home as soon as she is discharged. Taking her home? Mr. Harrison, my guidance counselor, stepped forward, his face flushed with indignation. He produced a thick file from his briefcase and slapped it onto the tray table. I have already handed Sienna's high school record, her original SAT score, verification, and the audio recording of Mrs. Miller threatening to destroy her future to the district attorney, Mr. Harrison said coldly. Furthermore, the emergency room physicians have documented severe, chronic scars on Sienna's back and shoulders, scars consistent with long-term physical abuse using wooden hangers and blunt objects. My father's face went instantly pale. That's a lie. She fell off her bike when she was little. And the burnt fabric fused to her skin? Aunt Clara stood up, her voice trembling with a rage I had never heard from her before. The burnt blue dress I bought her yesterday that you forced her into before she fell? You monsters. You tried to erase her. She isn't Sienna, my mother suddenly screamed, pointing at me with a shaking, manic hand. Look at her. She doesn't have the dimple. She broke the blue glass. She isn't Gemma. The police officer grabbed my mother's arms and forced them behind her back. Mrs. Miller, you are under arrest for felony child abuse, domestic violence, and endangerment of a minor. You have the right to remain silent. Release her, my father shouted, panicking as handcuffs clicked around my mother's wrists. You can't do this. Gemma, tell them. My mother struggled wildly as she was dragged toward the hallway, her hair falling over her face, screaming at the top of her lungs. Gemma, don't leave.
Me.
Gemma. I lay in the hospital bed, watching them drag her away. She didn't look at me once. Even in her arrest, she was calling out to a ghost. 2 days later, the story exploded across the entire country. The reporters who had been pushed away from our front door had caught wind of my hospitalization. Within hours, national news outlets picked up the story. SAT prodigy scores perfect 1600, forced into community college by delusional parents, survives second-story fall. The internet erupted in fury. Social media was flooded with demands for justice. While my parents' house was surrounded by news trucks, investigators, and outraged citizens. While I remained in the recovery ward, Zach and Aunt Clara went back to the house under police escort to retrieve my personal documents, my birth certificate, and what little clothes I owned. When Zach returned to the hospital that evening, his face was ghostly white. He held a heavy, rusted metal tin in his hands. Sienna, he said quietly, sitting beside my bed. When I went into that utility closet to pack your things, I had to move Gemma's old keyboard. I looked at him, confused. The keyboard? My mom always said never to touch it. I know, Zach breathed, his fingers trembling as he touched the rusted latch of the box. It was wedged into the narrow gap behind the back panel. The dust over. The latch hadn't been disturbed in 20 years. Gemma hid this before she died. He opened the tin. Inside lay a thick, leather-bound notebook with yellowed pages, alongside a small bundle of hand-drawn sketches. My breath hitched. What is that? It's Gemma's diary, Zach whispered. Sienna, everything your parents told you, everything they made you believe for 18 years, was a lie. He opened the diary to the first page and began to read aloud. June 14th, 2004. Mom hit me again today because I bought a blue sweater with my saved allowance. She screamed that blue was a trashy color and tore it to shreds. In front of me, she forced me to wear red. I hate red. Red looks like blood.
I
Hate it so much. My heart stopped. My hand tightened around the hospital bedsheet. What? What did you say? I stuttered, my voice cracking. Zach turned the page, his eyes filled with overwhelming sorrow. August 2nd, 2004. I wanted to take art classes in high school, but Dad snapped my paintbrushes and threw my sketchbook into the trash. He said artists are failures. He said I have to be a doctor. I hate running outside. My knees hurt. But Mom won't let me back inside until sunset. September 10th, 2004. I got an average grade on my math test today. Mom locked me in the dark utility closet for 12 hours without food. She kept saying I was useless. I can't breathe in here. I can't do this anymore. October 12th, 2004. I got accepted into the community college today. Mom was furious. She said if I couldn't get into an Ivy League, I was a disgrace to the family. Tomorrow is my 18th birthday. I'm going down to the lake. I don't want to live in this nightmare anymore. I hope if they ever have another child, they don't destroy her too. The hospital room fell into a dead, suffocating silence. Tears spilled uncontrollably from my eyes, dropping onto my arm cast. Gemma didn't love red. Gemma didn't love running wild outside.
Gemma didn't like
mangoes, and she didn't die in a tragic accident. Gemma had drowned herself 20 years ago to escape the exact same violent, suffocating tyranny that had been inflicted on me. After Gemma died, my mother's broken, narcissistic mind couldn't accept that her own abuse had driven her firstborn daughter to suicide. So, her brain rewrote reality. She fabricated an idealized fantasy of Gemma, a ghost who loved red, loved mangoes, loved community college, and was perfectly obedient. And when I was born, I wasn't just built to replace Gemma. I was built to embody a ghost that never even existed. The realization shattered the remaining embers of my soul, but from the ashes, something cold and dangerous took root. All my life, I had resented Gemma. I had hated her portrait, hated her legacy, and hated the shadow that swallowed my existence. Now, looking at the yellowed pages of her diary, I felt a profound, aching grief, not for the monster my parents created, but for the 18-year-old girl who had walked into the freezing water 20 years ago, utterly alone. We were never rivals. We were cellmates in the same mental prison, separated by 2 decades. Sienna, Zach said softly, touching my hand. The district attorney wants to drop all charges if your father agrees to put your mother in a state psychiatric facility. Your dad's lawyer is trying to claim it was all just a misunderstanding caused by grief. A misunderstanding? I looked up, my eyes clear and hollowed of all fear. Where's the media right now? They're outside the hospital main entrance, Zach replied. There are dozens of cameras. Get me a wheelchair, I said quietly. And bring Gemma's diary. 10 minutes later, Aunt Clara wheeled me into the main lobby of the hospital. The moment the sliding glass doors opened, a barrage of camera flashes blinded
the air.
Dozens of reporters scrambled forward, microphones thrust toward my
Face.
Sienna, how are your injuries? Is it true your parents tried to cancel your Harvard admission? Are you going to press charges against your mother? I raised my uninjured left hand, signaling for quiet. The noisy crowd instantly fell silent. I was wearing a plain, bright blue hospital gown. My short, tangled hair was unbrushed, and bandages covered my forehead and hands. I looked battered, but I sat straight. 18 years ago, I began, my voice ringing clear through the microphone. My parents told me I was born to be a replacement for my sister, Gemma. I held up the rusted metal tin resting on my lap. For 18 years, I was beaten if I wore blue. I was beaten if I scored high grades. I was forced to eat food I was violently allergic to and forced to live in a dark utility closet, all to satisfy my mother's memory of her perfect
Daughter.
The reporters gasped.
Camera shutters clicked frantically.
My mother told the world that Gemma was an angel who loved red, loved community, college, and died in a tragic drowning accident. I continued, opening the leather diary. But 2 hours ago, I found Gemma's true voice. I turned to the final entry of the diary and read Gemma's last words aloud too. The flashing cameras. I'm going down to the lake. I don't want to live in this nightmare anymore.
I
Hope if they ever have another child, they don't destroy her too. Silence descended upon the crowd like a heavy anvil. Several female journalists pressed their hands over their mouths, stifling gasps of horror. Gemma didn't drown by accident, I said, staring straight into the primary camera lens, knowing my father was watching from his jail cell. She killed herself to escape them. And for 20 years, my parents built a monument out of her corpse and tried to kill me with it. I looked directly into the lens. My name is Sienna Miller. I am not Gemma Shadow. I am the daughter who survived. The press conference blew the lid off the case. Public fury reached an unprecedented peak. The narrative shifted from a tragic case of parental grief to a terrifying, high-profile exposé on extreme psychological torture, child abuse, and domestic imprisonment. Under immense public pressure, the district attorney abandoned the plea deal. My father was formally indicted on multiple felony counts of child endangerment, criminal abuse of a dependent, and falsification of legal documents.
his
Employer immediately terminated his contract, and his bank accounts were frozen, amid pending civil lawsuits. 2 weeks later, while I was recovering in Aunt Clara's quiet suburban home, my father posted bail, using the last of his liquidation savings. That night, he came to Aunt Clara's front yard. I was sitting by the porch window, looking out at the moonlight, when I saw his stooped, haggard figure standing by the gate. He had lost weight, his clothes were wrinkled, and the confident, cold aura he once maintained had completely vanished. He knocked frantically on the glass. Aunt Clara opened the door, her face contorted in disgust. Get off my property, Richard, before I call the police. Clara, please. Let me talk to Sienna, my father pleaded, his voice breaking into ugly, desperate sobs. Sienna, please hear me out. I pushed my wheelchair out onto the porch, looking down at him coldly. What do
you want?
Sienna, my sweet girl. My father dropped to his knees on the lawn, tears streaming down his hollow cheeks. You have to drop the press statements.
The
bank is foreclosing on the house. I've lost my job. My pension is gone. If this goes to trial, I'll go to prison for 10 years. I watched him quietly. And I did everything for this family, he wept, beating his chest. I suffered for 20 years dealing with your mother's mental illness. I kept the peace. I hit you because if I didn't, your mother would have lost her mind completely.
I did
it to protect our home. You didn't hit me to protect the home, I said, my voice eerily calm. You hit me because it was easier to beat a child into submission than to face the reality that you allowed your first daughter to die. He froze, his mouth agape. You were a coward 20 years ago when Gemma walked to that lake. I continued, every word landing like a lead hammer. And you were a coward every single day you stood by and watched my mother bleed me dry. You didn't love Gemma and you didn't love me. You only loved the comfort of your quiet life. Sienna, I'm your father, he screamed, scrambling toward the steps. You can't do this to me. You're destroying your own blood. My father died the day he slapped my face for choosing a blue backpack. I replied coldly. Zach stepped out onto the porch, holding a phone with the emergency line connected. The police are 2 minutes away, Richard. Get lost. My father looked at me, realizing there was no mercy left in my eyes. The pathetic, weeping act melted away, replaced by the same bitter, ugly rage he had shown me my entire life. You wicked, ungrateful viper, he spat, standing up and shaking his fist. Gemma was 10 times the daughter you'll ever be.
I wish you had drowned in that
lake instead of her. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Gemma hated you too, I whispered soft enough for only the night wind to hear. Police cruisers pulled up to the curb with flashing blue lights. My father was tackled to the grass, handcuffed, and shoved into the back of the squad car, screaming curses into the night until the doors slammed shut. As for my mother, her psychological evaluation came back severe.
Confronted with
Gemma's real diary and the exposure of her lies, her mind suffered a total, irreversible collapse. She was declared legally insane and permanently committed to a high-security state psychiatric asylum. In her padded cell, she was given a stuffed doll dressed in red. She sits in the corner all day, whispering to the air, forever trapped in a lie of her own making. By mid-August, my bones had begun to heal. The cast on my right arm was removed, leaving only faint scars across my collarbone and wrists. One afternoon, a heavy envelope bearing the crest of Harvard University arrived at Aunt Clara's address. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it for a long time. Zach sat across from me, a gentle smile on his face. "Open it, Sienna." With trembling fingers, I tore open the seal. Inside was a personal letter from the Dean of Admissions, alongside an updated acceptance package. "Dear Sienna, in light of the extraordinary circumstances surrounding your high school tenure, the admissions board has unanimously voted to grant you full admission for the upcoming fall semester, accompanied by a full academic scholarship, complete housing coverage, and an unrestricted grant from the University Art Fellowship. We do not offer this because of what you have endured, but because a mind capable of scoring a perfect 1600 while bearing such unimaginable weight belongs here. We look forward to welcoming you to Cambridge." A tear fell onto the crisp white paper, blurring the ink of my name.
Sienna.
Not Gemma. A week before I was set to leave for Massachusetts, Zach drove me back to our old house one last time. The bank had seized the property, and workers were clearing out the remains before putting it up for auction. Armed with a court permit, I walked through the front door. The house smelled of rot, damp earth, and stale dust. Gemma's memorial corner had been dismantled. The broken glass and red frames were gone, leaving only pale rectangles on the faded wallpaper where her photos used to hang. I walked into my old room, the windowless utility closet. The dusty keyboard was gone, but on the floor lay a single box of my broken art supplies that the workers hadn't thrown out yet. I knelt down, picked up a tube of cobalt blue acrylic paint, and squeezed a drop onto my fingertip. The rich, vibrant pigment shone brightly in the dim light. Then, Zach and I drove to the local cemetery on the outskirts of town. Gemma's grave was located in a lonely, overgrown corner of the plot.
The
headstone was small, weathered, and simple. Gemma Miller, 1986 to 2004. My parents had never put fresh flowers on her actual grave. For 20 years, they had worshipped a shrine in their hallway while leaving her real resting place to rot under weeds. I pulled up the tall grass surrounding her headstone and sat down on the dry earth. From my tote bag, I pulled out a fresh, vibrant bouquet of blue hydrangeas and laid them gently against the cold stone. Beside them, I placed Gemma's real diary, wrapped safely in a waterproof casing, returning her voice to her at
last.
"I know you tried your best, Gemma," I whispered, touching the carved letters of her name. "You held out as long as you could." The afternoon wind rustled through the oak trees overhead, sounding like a quiet, long overdue sigh of relief. "You don't have to carry them anymore," I said, tears blurring my vision as I smiled. "I'm going to college for both of us, and I'm going to wear blue every single day." September, Cambridge, Massachusetts. The autumn breeze carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves across Harvard Yard. Historic brick buildings stood tall under a clear, endless blue sky, bustling with students carrying books, laughing, and chatting on the lawn. I stood in the center of the courtyard, wearing a simple, knee-length light blue sundress and a white cardigan, the outfit Aunt Clara and Zach had bought for me. My hair was cut short, hovering just above my shoulders, light and free. In my right hand, I held an oversized wooden easel and a brand new set of
Professional oil paints.
"Sienna, over here." I turned around. Zach was standing near the steps of the university library, waving his hand, holding 2 cups of warm coffee. He had driven 4 hours down from his own campus just to help me settle into my dormitory on my first day. I walked toward him, the weight of the heavy easel feeling light in my hands. "How does it feel?" Zach asked, handing me a cup of coffee and looking at me with proud, bright eyes. I took a sip. It was sweet, warm, and rich with hazelnut, a flavor I had chosen all by myself. "It feels like I'm finally awake," I said softly. Later that afternoon, I attended my very first studio art class in the fine arts
Building.
The studio was huge, flooded with golden sunlight streaming through massive, floor-to-ceiling glass windows. The professor asked us to set up our canvases and paint whatever represented our origin. My classmates began sketching landscapes, portraits, and abstract patterns. I stood before my blank white canvas. I took a broad brush, dipped it deep into a palette of brilliant cobalt blue, solar yellow, and fiery gold, and struck the canvas with bold, sweeping strokes. I didn't paint Gemma. I didn't paint the dark utility closet, the wooden hangers, or the cold, bitter red blood on the concrete driveway. I painted a soaring bird breaking through a wall of dark storm clouds, its wings bathed in sunlight, flying toward an open, limitless horizon. As I put down my brush, the girl sitting at the neighboring easel turned to look at my painting, her eyes wide with genuine admiration. "Wow," she gasped. "That is so vibrant. The energy in those blues is incredible. What's your name?" I turned to her. I didn't look down. I didn't hide my face. I didn't check to see if anyone was watching me for mistakes. I opened my mouth and let out a warm, bright smile, a smile without a deep dimple. On my right cheek, a smile that belonged to no ghost, a smile that was entirely, undeniably my own. "Hi," I said, my voice steady, proud, and clear. "My name is Sienna."